assembly required, but listeners' discretion is advised. Sit back, enjoy, and don't forget to subscribe or follow. Now, let's not keep you waiting. It's time to welcome your hosts of TNT Podcast, Tara and Tina.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Hey, welcome to another episode of TNT Podcast. This is episode 21, Badass Counseling. You can follow us on Instagram at TNT Podcast Show or on Twitter at T_N_T Podcast. Best to just subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, we're available on all the listening platforms as well. So tonight, show, we're totally switching gears. We are super excited to introduce our next guest. This guy is a total badass. He's an online sensation. His TikTok alone has, I think, Tina, 1.8 million followers. Like, just incredible. He's an author. He's a public speaker. He's an ex-military. He's a counselor. He's a podcast host. I mean, I don't think there's anything this guy hasn't done. So we're super excited to welcome Sven Erlandson of BadassCounseling. But before we bring him on, we just wanted to show the audience an example of one of his TikToks. So have a watch.
One of the most tragically funny things that I hear from a person when a couple is breaking up, often hear, I don't always hear it, but is, Sven, I was happy. I just assumed she was too. Or he was. It's like, oh, you fucking clueless fuck. And it happens for one of two reasons. Either A, the person has actually been fucking telling you how unhappy they are, maybe over months, maybe over years, and the things that they need changed, and these are the needs that they need met. And you've just been so out of touch because you've always been the center of the universe that you don't really give a shit, or you don't really fucking hear when other people are unhappy in their interactions with you. Or B, and this is much more subtle, that there has been no explicit stating of their dissatisfaction, but there have been changes in patterns. There have been deviations from patterns. There have been anomalies. And as you heard me say it before, people reveal their character through their patterns. They reveal their secrets through their anomalies. So is it that you're not tuned into the patterns of people around you, even their subtle ones? Or is it that you're absolutely just fucking clueless, even when somebody is telling you overtly that they need change? Have a kick-ass day. One of the most
Welcome, Sven Erlandson of BadassCounseling, to the show tonight.
Thank you, ladies. It's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
Oh, thanks for joining us. We're just absolutely thrilled that you could be with us tonight. I think we're still in shock, Tina and I.
Yes.
I wasn't really active on TikTok, and it was actually Tina that mentioned to go and have a look. And I watched some of your TikToks, and I was absolutely blown away. Just a straight up, no bullshit guy.
Yeah.
You're like kind of a big deal.
No. I'm just a fucking regular guy. I grew up in Minnesota in the most blue collar suburb of the Twin Cities. I grew up in a shitty little city. I mean, I liked it, but little city called Fridley, very blue collar. My next door neighbor to this day, his old man was a janitor, a bunch of brothers, and one of them, Troy, has bought Corvettes, old Corvettes, and he restores them in his fucking garage. So just
Nice.
blue collar folks. I come from blue collar, so I ain't nothing special, just a regular dude. And it's great to be on your show.
Awesome. One of the things I did read about you that I found really interesting and super cool is you've actually experienced a lot of what your clients come to see you about, whether it's individuals or couples. You didn't just go to school, you read the books, you passed the tests. You actually lived these experiences. So do you think that has given you like almost an edge to this, or a better understanding when your clients come to see you?
Absolutely. I mean, I think about it in y'all's business, in drag racing and cars and shit, which I know so little about. I have tremendous admiration for. My father grew up on farms during the Depression and World War II, but they had a machine shop and they had a government patent for some machinery and working with tractors and blah, blah, blah. And my dad grew up around machinery and he understood cars. And he understood cars and he understood machinery because he had been working in that shit his whole life. He knew the grease, and he could tell when listening to pistons firing. He could tell when something was off.
Yes.
He could tell. I don't know shit from Shinola when it comes from cars, but he could tell. But he had the experience. Now, I'm not against book learning. I'm really not. And I respect people and so on and so forth. But when you've been through 2 fucking divorces that rip your fucking heart out, even though you love the woman, in the first case, she divorced me. In the second case, I had to divorce her, and I adored my second wife. But it was just like fucking oil and water, man. It's just like, and it's just as hard to be left, but it's just as hard to walk away from someone you leave. Well, shit, if you don't learn from that experience, that's a gold mine of wisdom sitting right there. And what I've been doing in my life is like what you guys do with cars. It's just like you're reading them. You're learning from this car. You're learning what the chassis can take. You're learning about the, you got to tweak the alignment or the fucking springs and blah, blah, blah. It's just like, and so for me, yeah, definitely having the experiences. And, and also for years I was a pastor, and, when you're down in the mud with people of their fucking lives and they're telling you about their kid who's a drug addict, or you're talking, they just, Sven, my mother just died at the age of 60 and I'm only 28, or, shit like that. Everything. It's like you're learning. When you've cheated on people, when you've been cheated on, you're learning about that. And so, yeah, man. And for me, honestly, what it is for me, the way I think about my work is, yeah, I've done it a long time. I'm 55. I've been counseling people for 30 years, but I'm just one beggar trying to show another beggar where to find food, man. It's just like I've learned from my shit, and maybe I have a bit that I can help people with, rather than it's just pompous top down and here's what you should do and here, fuck that shit, fuck off, get out of here. Whereas just being fucking real with people, like you guys are, you're very real people, you're relatable.
Yes, exactly. And I was going through your bio, like you have a huge amount of accomplishments. Like I could probably spend this whole hour just going over those, but maybe you could just take us back to the beginning. And I just want to know how you got to this point. Like what made you decide to actually want to help people and couples through issues?
Yeah. And my work right now, I have a counseling practice in Manhattan and also in Connecticut, but I have clients around the world, and it's helping couples, individuals, people who've been very successful owning companies, running companies, small companies, big companies, people in show business, politics, academia, shit like that. And so it's a full cross section of America, or of the world. But my father was a pastor, my mother was a pastor's wife, and they just gave their lives to serving people. They didn't ram their shit down anybody's throat. They just believed in serving people. They loved people. They raised 6 kids. And, us kids weren't their whole life. Family wasn't everything to them. Family was important. But when their kids were, they put food on our table, clothes on our back, shelter over our heads, and they gave us love. I was told every single day of my life that I was loved by my father, told that by my mother, given a hug every morning by each of them. But then for them, after our own kids are food and sheltered and given hugs and told their love, now there's people in this world who weren't given that, who don't have that, and they felt a sense of obligation to want to bring that to the world. And they never forced that shit on us as boys. They never forced that on us. They never told us we had to. But each one of my brothers, and my sister, who's mostly a guy, whatever, but we just have chosen to serve in different ways because it brings us joy. And yeah, I put in a few years in the military, then decided to get out, felt a calling to ministry, and went and finished my college degree. And then I went to seminary, which was 4 years. And then I had the strangest fucking thing happen. So my first wife and I were divorcing, and she had divorced me. And her father was a big shot. At one point, he was the general counsel of the Securities Exchange Commission. He was a big shot, appointed by Richard Nixon, all this shit. And he came to me at one point, and I'm in my late 20s, and he says, Sven, as you know, you and I have never gotten along, and I don't particularly like you.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, exactly. Don't sugarcoat it. Just give it to me straight. And he said, but you have a gift, and I know somebody who needs what you have. And it was a guy who was in finance, Wall Street, big shot, and this was back in the late 90s. And he said, would you be willing to talk to him? I said, sure. And I ended up talking with that guy, and he had everything, but his life was fucked up. And, I managed to turn him around pretty quickly and help him find his own sense of real self and so forth. And that sort of spawned this whole other life. Ministry was going on here, and I'd written my first book, Spiritual But Not Religious. I was the first author to ever write on that, long before that became a common phrase. That didn't exist as a common phrase back in the 90s. And so I have this thing going on, and I'm in ministry, but I'm getting thrown out of ministry because of my theology, because of my stance on gay rights, and also because I'm just a fucking obnoxious person. And they threw me out a few times. And then I got this thing going on in the whole corporate world. And honestly, if I'm totally honest with you guys, everybody thought I was fucking crazy. Nobody fucking thought anything of me back then. Parts of my own family ostracized me and shit like that because I didn't fit into any fucking molds. And so this is when I'm talking, this is no shit. This is no shit. It's funny that I'm on your show tonight because I was literally talking to a young man in the last week and a half, 2 weeks. Guess what his aspiration is? Be a fucking professional driver. But he grows up and he's in sort of a white collar home, the whole fucking college degree. And I'm all for college degrees. Nothing wrong with that, blah, blah, blah. But this is his passion. Everybody thinks I'm crazy. And I said, well, first of all, if they don't think you're fucking crazy, then you ain't being your fucking self. And this is where we determine whether or not have the balls to be authentic. And how badly do you want? What the fuck do you want? Are you willing to do it, even if it means ostracizing everybody who claims to fucking love you? And I ostracized the fuck ton of people. I burned through 2 wives because they didn't think, what I was doing made sense, blah, blah, blah. But I kept doing what I was doing. I didn't make sense to a lot of people. I got thrown out of a lot of shit. I was treated as a fucking pariah. But you stay with your own voice long enough, and all of a sudden people start respecting you. All of a sudden people start coming to you with their fucking question. And I said to this kid, the day will come, and you mark my motherfucking words, because I'm going to be saying in the back of your head, I fucking told you so, you little fucking peckerhead. If you pursue your fucking passion, the day will come when young racers will be coming to fucking you, wanting insider tips, where the mechanics will be coming to you asking, okay, how do you want me to tweak your fucking struts here? Or whatever it might be.
Right.
But it's the courage to be authentic. But so often we get fucking put in this fucking channel from a young age, and there's so much pressure from the people who love us most or claim to love us most. And those fucking expectations, that it's hard to break out of that, to have the courage to allow my authentic voice to come out and say, fuck it. If you love me, then you're going to support me. I don't care if you support me financially, but you're going to give me your fucking love. And if you don't love me, then don't, fine. But I got to be me.
Right.
So that's some of the background.
Wow. That's amazing. One of the TikToks I absolutely love where you talk about lying in a relationship. And what percentage of the time do you actually call your partner out on their shit? Or, percentage of the time that you actually tell them how you feel?
That's a big,
if there was a test, I'm sure humans would fail miserably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And see, this gets back into what I was talking about just a minute ago. These pressures and the expectations that are put on kids, that I, the parent, want you to be who I want you to be. And so what the child learns is my fucking voice doesn't matter. What I want, what I need, what my feelings are, what my aspirations are less important. So they're constantly keyed into the parent saying, well, what do they want? And a kid always wants a parent's approval and certainly fears their disapproval. So I'll just be what mom and dad want. But what that means is not just that sometimes I'll short circuit my dreams and not go after my dreams, but worse, what it means is that I keep my feelings in. And a lot of us guys, and tough women too, are taught, oh, fuck your feelings. Yep, yeah, I'll give you something to cry about, young lady, or whatever it might be. But we're taught, big boys don't cry, or keep your feelings in. Feelings are bullshit. It's bullshit. Because you get into a fucking relationship, if you can't tell someone in the small things especially, when they kind of hurt your feelings. If you, for instance, I've been divorced twice. I think each of you has been divorced once. You try to blend 2 fucking families. All right, that's no small feat. If you each have kids, all right, so I'm coming in with my kids, and Tina, you're coming in with your kids. Right. And now I might feel a little bit hurt if you're a little rough with my son. And I don't mean physically rough. I mean just like hard on him, or if you're not giving energy, or you might be pissed if I'm not giving more energy to your daughter. Right. But if I don't have the courage to speak up on behalf of my child, or it's even harder when it's not on behalf of somebody that I'm defending, but on behalf of me. You know what? Honestly, sweetheart, you hurt my fucking feelings. And that sounds so pussy or whatever, but you did. It's just like, why are you doing that? But to speak your feelings, to believe that your own fucking feelings and how I'm feeling, my needs and my wants matter in the small things. Oh, now that's a challenge, because it's so easy to let all those small ones build up until it's a mountain, and then the pressure cooker blows. Then I feel justified. A lot of people only feel fucking justified expressing their shit when it's big. So they let it fucking build up. Well, that's horse shit. That's horse shit, because then it's explosions and it's fighting and it's all that bullshit. rather than what if I just had the courage to express my truth in the small term and hold you to treating it with respect. Now we could actually address problems when they're small and they're not fucking exploding and there's shit all over the walls because we've just been exploding all the shit we've been throwing at each other for the last fucking month. And we're finally fucking, talking about it now or yelling about it now. So yeah, man, the courage to not lie. And it's not the lies of omission that you actually tell, like, oh, yeah, I actually, fucking lost $20,000 for our money in the stock market. Okay, those are important, but it's the lies of omission. It's the shit we don't tell. That's what always creates the greatest long-term problems.
Always.
Why do you think it's so damn hard to do that, to have those tough conversations with your partner, to start that tough conversation?
Yeah.
Why is that so hard for us?
Absolutely. What a great question. Because the fear is always that if I express how I feel, you may not like what I have to say. So I may get backlash. You may say, well, that's bullshit. You may deflect or defend yourself or dodge the question or negate or minimize what I have to fucking say. You want to know, women often say, and men have their own problems, women have their own problems. And I'm not saying either one is better or worse. I'm not into that fucking game. All right. We all bring different shit, and it's not always gender exclusive. Sometimes it's just unique to that person. But very often for guys, for instance, they're afraid to bring their shit up and talk about their shit because a lot of times it gets denied by the woman. Well, a lot of women can say the same thing about expressing how they feel. Or a lot of men feel that they'll share their stuff, and then the woman just goes on about her stuff, doesn't even acknowledge my stuff, or it gets used against them in the next fucking fight. And so really, ultimately, the reason we're afraid to express our real truths, small, medium, or large, is because in the past, when we've done so, we've experienced pain.
Something negative.
Right. It's something negative. Exactly. A scolding, a criticism, a denying it. Oh, no, that didn't happen. And the truth is, when you're in a relationship with a spouse or a girlfriend or a boyfriend, it's very powerful because this is a very intimate person. But what was infinitely more powerful were the one or two most powerful people in your life. And that was mom and dad. And if you had pain and you had no power as a child, they had all the fucking power, and they were like God. And so if they hurt you, oh yeah, you're fucking fearful, and you believe your own feelings don't matter. So you're in expressing your own feelings, you're afraid you'll hurt the other person. You're afraid the other person will hurt you. You're afraid they'll minimize or deny your feelings. Or worst of all, for many people, you're afraid that if I show you who I really am, you'll walk away. You'll reject me. Right. And the truth is, every person, male or female, non-binary, whatever, every person longs to be seen for who I really am and loved for who I really am. That I show you who I really am and you stay. Right. But the challenge of that, we all want that, male or female, everybody wants that.
Yeah, for sure.
But the challenge of that in being seen for who I really am is that I have to show who I really am.
That's scary.
You bet.
That's crazy. What about, like, I know people talk about communication and how important it is, keeping that line of communication open. You got to watch tone, things that you say, how you say it, where you are.
Facial expressions.
Everything.
Like I'm making right now. I just caught myself.
I could just sense you disapprove of what I'm saying, Tina. I could see it all over your face. You hate what I'm saying. You always do this, Tina.
I hate it.
Another good topic too is people dating right now in the dating world, and different signs and things to watch for. Like I watched one of your TikToks that talk about, are they selling? Are they buying? Are they energy suckers? Which also takes me into something, some people when they're dating now, the one person needs constant attention, maybe 100 texts a day or something like that.
Right.
And when you're busy or you can't, they seem to get angry because, they want more and you're just busy, tied up, it's almost like a demand. So like just some of the signs that maybe, people can look out for.
Right. And before I answer the question of what the signs are, let me put it to you this way. When you're starting a relationship, knowing what the signs are is only good if you can actually see the signs. So very often there are signs. I have plenty of, for instance, women that I've counseled who say, Sven, and guys too, actually, and I was guilty of this, excuse me. Plenty of women who say, who admit after the fact, I was just so caught up in my emotion. I was just so in love. I was just so into him, or the sex was great, or gosh, we had these deep conversations, or whatever it might be. And I was so conditioned. I was wanting a relationship, or, let's say they're 24 and it's like, I had always just wanted a family of my own, or I was feeling pressured from my family. When are you going to get married? When are you going to get married? Or my friends from high school. Well, you've been dating this guy for 2 years. When are you guys going to get married? When are you going to? It's just like, so I was feeling all these pressures or momentum, well, we're progressing along. I guess we should get fucking married. And so wherever those pressures were coming from, or my own emotions getting worked up, oh my God, he's wonderful, we lose the signs. When we get caught up in, and I'm pro emotions, I'm all for fucking feelings. We all love feeling in love. I mean, come on, guy or girl, it doesn't fucking matter. Everybody loves being in love. It feels great. Okay. But it's so easy when we get so swollen with those emotions, so pregnant with that, excitement. But also if we're feeling pressures from external forces, it's very easy then to miss the signs, even if we know what the signs are. It's like, oh no, it's no big deal, or that'll heal itself, or I'm sure it'll go away. Right? We've all done that shit in our fucking head. So we got to slow the fuck down. It's just like one of my brothers, he bought his first apartment building when he was 24. By the time he was 35, he had 1,000 units. He ended up retiring from corporate America, but having more and more units. And now he just sold his whole business at the age of 60 or whatever, like thousands of units, and did very well for himself. But I remember when I was buying my first house in my 20s, he said, Sven, remember, you need to always be able to walk away. You fall in love with your house, fine, that's fine. But you got to be able to walk away right up until the moment of signing. In other words, you got to have a cool head about it too. Nothing wrong with falling in love with a house, but you got to have a cool head about it. So the first thing, and that relates to relationships, right? Because we get so worked up into our emotions. And it's the same way with what I was talking about just a minute ago. When we let all the shit build up and then it explodes, and we're so worked up in our fucking emotion that we can't even have a rational fucking conversation. I can't de-escalate myself or ask you to de-escalate so we can actually talk about our issues rather than just it being this flying fucking shit show of emotion. And I am for emotions. I am for feelings. I really am.
Well, it's what it means to be human, right? To feel things.
There
right?
it is.
It
there it
is.
Human. But if we get so full of them, we can't see. So in the beginning of dating, part of what causes us to get worked up in those emotions and miss the signs is that we're not getting our feelings. We're not getting our emotions out. We've got all this shit, especially as men. Oh, God. Men don't have generally way to get their fucking feelings out. And they've been taught, feelings don't matter. You want to fuck up your life? Go with that belief system that feelings don't fucking matter. And you're just going to keep it in. Go with that. And the reason I say that sarcastically is I counsel everyone. War veterans, fucking cops, police, people who have been shot at, people who have killed human beings. I was a prison chaplain for a while. And it's just like, you want to fuck up your life? Fucking hold all your feelings in. And eventually, even the toughest of the tough come to me. Why? Maybe they come to me with the bottle in one hand and their service revolver in the other hand, and they're ready to do themselves in. I've had that happen more than once. But they come to me. Why? Because they need to get it out, and they realize they needed to get it out. And they've been keeping it in their whole goddamn miserable fucking life. All right. So the point is, you're smart. The smart ones get all that shit out when they're young. And they find the tools, the self-help books or the therapist. So many people getting therapy for their kids nowadays. I'm all for that. Why? Because they're conditioning the child to get the pain out. When I was 13, my mother started me journaling. And that's what I used. That's how I healed myself from a suicidal depression. I've got 9-inch scars running up my fucking forearms, right? I was in a suicidal depression for 12 years and I didn't have a therapist who could help me. So I did it on myself. And I read 1,000 self-help books and psychology books and spirituality books, and I found my own way. So all of my method and all of my books and all of my podcasts and all is shit that I've used, not just on myself. I know it works, but with clients as well. But my point is this, going back to the beginning of those dating relationships, if you're getting your own pain out, identifying what the pressures are in your life. Well, shit, my buddies are really pushing me. How do I really feel about my buddies pushing me? And God, it pisses me off because I don't know if I want to marry this girl yet. And I mean, yeah, she's real pretty and everything, but I don't really fucking know because I also want to do my career. And it's flushing out all that shit. As my 93-year-old mother used to say, she passed away a year ago, and as she used to say for decades, she used to do this shit long before I did. She said, Sven, naming the beast is half the problem. The Buddhists talk about awareness. I'm not Buddhist, but I'll steal from anybody. They talk about awareness, and everything changes when you're aware. Think about an engine. When you can identify, when you're aware, when you can pinpoint and name what the fucking problem is, you know something's not firing right. And it's not in the crankcase. It's somewhere else. Something is fucking off. Oh, it must be a timing belt. It's not the fucking timing belt. What the fuck is it? Once you finally name it, now I can fix it.
Right.
And so it's the same way. So before you're going into those significant relationships that are going to lead to marriages, they're going to lead to kids, so that I don't fuck up kids later. I'm best off at 18, 20, 22, 16, 28, best off flushing out all that shit now and all of my feelings now, and keep flushing it out, whether it's with a therapist or a couple of your best friends. Don't make it all one person you're dumping on, but unless it's your therapist, because that's what you're paying for, a clergy person, or your own fucking journals or whatever. But flushing it out so that you're able to see the signs. So what are the signs? Person who's always fucking talking like I'm doing today. But you asked me to, so you can't do
this doesn't count. Nope, this doesn't count.
Or a person who doesn't listen. A person who you'll say your fucking sentence and then they go on about talking about themselves. This is a person that's going to lead to your misery later, because they're fundamentally telling you in the beginning of the relationship, I don't really give a shit what you're saying. And guess what? They're not going to give a shit what you're saying in 2 fucking years or 20 fucking years. And you're going to be fucking miserable because it's all about them, right? But then on the other hand is the person who never shares their fucking feelings. And we think that's cool in a guy. He's all fucking tough. Oh yeah, man, he's a man. No, he's not. He's a fucking coward. I mean, he's tough on the outside, but people who are tough on the outside are usually mush on the inside. I want somebody who's the opposite. I'd love somebody who's soft on the outside, but they can crank up that fucking fire and jam it up in your fucking face in 2 seconds flat, but they don't have to play that card. They can just be soft. They don't have to always be tough. Someone always being tough is protecting a soft shell. So they're always going to be in defense mode, or they're always going to have to make themselves big to protect their soft inner shell. Don't get in a relationship with that type of person unless they do the fucking healing first. Or someone who won't share their feelings, recipe for fucking disaster. Someone who's always taking the attention, recipe for disaster. Someone's always evading attention, flying below the radar. They don't want to stick their head above water for fear of it getting cut off. That's a person you're going to spend your whole life. And this was sort of my second marriage. Very gregarious person, but I spent my whole marriage trying to convince this woman that she was loved. And she was convinced, that nobody loved her. And she just never fucking believed that I truly fucking loved her. And it's just like, and you can sniff that out in the beginning, someone who's always doubting your love. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're always needing affirmation or they're always needing words of encouragement. That can be its own, sort of drain. But it's just someone who has this inner doubt of their own worth. Well, why? If you got a guy, ladies, if you got a guy who's going out of the way and is Mr. Consistent, he's steady Eddie, consistent in his love, he owns his shit, he calls you on your shit, he's not a dick, and you get 6 months in, you get 9 months in, you get a year in, and you're like, this guy's Mr. Consistent, he's steady Eddie. You believe in his love, right? Yeah, but imagine if he wasn't consistent or was inconsistent, or what if he didn't share his fucking feelings? You sense when shit is off. And if you've gotten out all your pain, your sensors are more attuned. Your intuition is picking up on those red flags. That's why we get all that fucking pain and all those fears and all that momentum and all that other bullshit out, so that your own intuition senses it, acknowledges it, and calls it out. Because the truth is, if you call it out, sometimes people will actually change and say, you know what, you're right. I was kind of a dick and I don't want to be that way. I want a good relationship, and they'll change. Okay, now you got somebody who's high caliber. This is somebody you want to build a fucking relationship with. So it's both what the signs are, and I talk about this in my podcast and in the book and everything, but it's not just what the signs are, but it's also, have you gotten out your shit so that you can actually see or feel or sense the signs? Because a lot of times it just comes through intuition. And I went to the Air Force Academy, all right? I was Air Force. A lot of my buddies now are 2, 3, 4-star generals. Literally, an old classmate of mine just got his 4-star. These guys are fucking master pilots, command pilots, flew in wars, all this shit. A lot of them are in commercial airlines now and shit like that. Well, they've been around planes their whole life. They can sense when something is off. They can sense it. They still depend on their checklists and shit. It's like all you guys around engines and cars and shit. You can sense when something is off. That's your intuition talking when something doesn't fucking feel right. And the more you get all your pain and your emotions out, the more you can sense when things are off.
Well, you were talking about intuition. You actually had a TikTok about that. How we don't listen to our intuition. Why don't we?
Yeah. Well,
why don't we?
That, and Tina, that's a great question, because very often we don't want to listen to think about if you're invested in a relationship, even if you're 3 months or 6 months in, let alone 6 years in or 16 years in, it's like you want it to be good. Sometimes our sensors, our sonar is picking up on the ping, ping, and we don't want it because we want this relationship. Oh, he's such a great guy. Or, oh, she's a fucking great woman, man. I love this broad, and I don't want to fuck, and so we ignore it. Or maybe we ignore it, not just because we don't want to lose the relationship and then be alone again, but we ignore it because we don't want to have to actually say something and say, hey, I don't mean to hurt your feelings or anything, but I don't like how this feels. Or, I kind of don't like it when you treat me that way, because you fear the backlash, like we talked about before. Well, I don't want to hurt your fucking feelings or shit. So yeah, a lot of times we ignore our own intuition. And you know what happens? What happens is that problem, like a cancer, it just fucking metastasizes. And eventually we get so far down the road and it turns into a full-blown fuck fest. It's just an absolute mess. And so the challenge of life is to begin to trust that voice a little bit sooner when it's only half of a shit show, then a little bit sooner when it's just beginning to sound like a shit show, then a little bit sooner, till eventually we're trusting our own inner voice completely, because we know what happens when we don't.
Right.
Pain is a beautiful teacher. Pain is a wonderful teacher, because eventually it teaches us in life, oh shit, if I don't listen to my intuition, I know it's going to lead to more pain. Or I know that if I let another guy back in my life, or if I let another woman back in my life who's so absorbed in her career that she just doesn't want to take time for a relationship, which is totally fine. That's her prerogative. Or a guy doing the same. That's fine. But I don't want that for my life. It's totally fine that she's doing it. I just don't want. So in other words, all these things that we learn from, if you're not learning from your fucking relationships, if I'm not learning from my relationships, huge mistake, because I'm just going to make the same mistake, same pain again later. That's why we examine the losses. That's why we examine when our car has lost the motherfucking race, to figure out what we can tweak, what we can change, what we can amp up, what we can dial down, how I can change my response to the lights, all of these things, so that I can improve in my next relationship or in my next race, as it were.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so that reminds me too of one of your TikToks where when you're getting into a new relationship, often we'll base it on an old relationship or other relationships we had in the past. So you've already kind of like tainted, so to speak, from the get-go.
Absolutely. I mean, think about that. And so past relationships. So let's say, Tara, you're in a relationship now with Paul, and Paul's a great guy, but the last guy, Steve, and the guy before that, Derek, kind of hurt your feelings. Maybe one of them cheated, but the other one didn't. But it was just like, it was rough and tumble and you really felt with him, but then he pushed you away, or, whatever the story was. Or let's say it goes way back, where you were taught as a child, your feelings didn't fucking matter. You were taught you're a loser. You'll never amount to much. I had a client literally just today. Her own mother used to say to her, "You're a two-bit whore. You'll never amount to anything in this life." Oh yeah, she's a massively successful woman, my client, but she still has that inner voice believing she's a two-bit whore. So guess what? People who believe they're too fat, too skinny, too smart, too stupid, too this, too much of a loser. Oh, you're the pretty daughter. Oh, you're the smart daughter. Well, thanks. I guess that means I'm not pretty at all. Or you're the pretty daughter. Oh, I guess that means I'm not smart. All these fucking messages, many of them intentional, but often the times they're underlying messages. Okay, so think about it. So now you're in a relationship with Paul, Tara. And let's say whether the pain came from childhood, which is where most of it came from, or let's just say it came from your relationship with Derek. And so now you're kind of got your walls up in this relationship, right? And you're really afraid because actually Steve, who was kind of an in-between relationship, he was really rough on you, right? And not physically rough, just rough on you and hurt your feelings. So you got these fucking walls up and you're scared. And it's like, you know what, really? I don't want to show anyone who I really am, because if you saw who I really was, you'd walk away, right? So I'm going to put my fucking walls up. Well, Paul is actually a great guy. He's steady Eddie. He's Mr. Consistent. You're 3 years, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 14 months down the road, and he's just Mr. fucking Consistent. But he's knocking on that wall saying, show me who you really are. I like what I see already, but you're convinced if he sees it, you won't like it. You're convinced he'll reject it because, I'm just a two-bit whore, or I'm too this, or I'm not enough that, right? I'm a dummy, or whatever it might be. And he keeps knocking, and you can't connect to somebody. You cannot truly connect to somebody unless you have the balls to show them who the fuck you really are. I call it radical honesty. Brutal honesty is just pointing out what's wrong with everybody else. Radical honesty is me showing you who I really am, what's wrong with me, what my aspirations are, what my fears are, and that's scary shit. So I'm going to stay behind that fucking wall. And Paul keeps trying, and he's a great guy. He keeps trying, but eventually, because there's nothing to connect to, eventually Paul does this. He walks away. So I have just created the very eventuality that I was most afraid of, him leaving. And so it requires, that's right. So we hide in our relationships. We create this new relationship based on shit that happened in our old relationship. Or maybe, here's one, counseling a client for the last year, woman, great woman, successful in her own right, and has 3 kids and all this shit. And because her ex-husband had taught her that she was fat, she believed that she wasn't attractive. Now, she had sort of gotten a similar message growing up, but then she's been dating. First guy she dated, really dated out of her marriage. They had a nice sort of sexual relationship, whatever, but it didn't go anywhere, and he didn't text her enough. And for her, that was a big deal. I want somebody who's more interactive. He would respond every time she texted, but he would never initiate text. And she's like, I always felt like wondering what the hell's going on, and do you really give a shit about me? And so for her, that was an indicator that I don't want this. And what I was constantly counseling her on is when it's flow, it's flow. Yeah. You're both generally getting your needs met. And when you aren't getting your needs met, you express it. And then that person says, yeah, I'll do that. I'd love to text you more often. I was just sort of nervous because I didn't want to bother you because I know you're a busy professional woman or whatever it might be.
Right.
But where you're willing to change, but there's generally flow. So listen to what happened though. Listen to what happened. So she came into this relationship. Then after that first guy, she came into the relationship with a second guy. We'll just call him Jim. She came into a relationship with Jim. And Jim's like totally into her. And he's a nice guy, just a nice guy, good guy. And I could tell from some of the things she told me about him. It's like, okay, this guy's kind of a straight up guy. He's a straight up guy. And she said, Sven, that maybe it was the, month and a half in or whatever, they had sex for the first time, or at least they made out, some groping, whatever. And he's into my body. And I was really nervous. She said, because I know I'm about 20 pounds overweight, over what I'd like to be. But I'm just so convinced in my own head from what my ex said that, my body's ugly, And then we, maybe it was a month later and she said, we had sex for the first time and I kept the lights off, but he's like totally into my body. And here's what she said. He loves my belly. Right?
That's awesome.
Right. She says, that's my soft spot. I said, that's every woman's, one of the great fear spots. For guys, it's love handles or, whatever.
Right.
Or penis size or whatever. Right. But he's like, no, I love it. And he just can't get enough of me. And it's genuine. And so for her, boy, you talk about it in the album, the record spinning on the record player, big scratch. It's like total rewiring of everything she had been taught by Derek and Steve and whoever else. Right. And so for her, but she had been allowing herself to be colored by her past experience. It was determining. So the first couple of times they had sex with the lights off and she was nervous to get naked with him and all these things, when in fact he loved who she was, which to her was mind blowing. Right. Because we get so conditioned by her. Well, that can affect our behaviors. That can affect how we interact, how we socialize, compliments that we give, compliments that we can't receive. All of these things are conditioned by our past experiences if we allow them to be.
Right.
And most often it's the pain and the fear that cause the most damage. The pain that's been inflicted. If we don't get that fucking pain out, it's going to determine your next fucking relationship. Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. Yeah. What's the most common issue or issues that you have people coming in to see you for that you'd say?
Well, the one it's every single client really in a way has the exact same problem. And that is that they have messages. I talk about 3 main things that destroy your life. I've already mentioned them today. Pain, past pain, trauma is the big word nowadays. Pain, fears of things happening, fear of being destitute, fear of being poor, fear of being alone, fear of the unknown, fear of death, fear of being medically disabled, fear of my kids. If I die, my kids are on their own, fear of some, and then obviously fear of something happening to my kids. But so there's pain, there's fear. And then the third thing is really the most insidious thing. And that is beliefs that get pressed into us as children. And they're often not explicit. You know how when, the men and the women on the road crew come out and lay a new sidewalk in front of your fucking house, right? And they're out there and they're pouring the cement and they flatten it, and they put the line in it, and then they're working it. And eventually they put the tape around it on the lats and, sort of section it off so all the little peckerhead kids in the neighborhood can't come and walk on it or press their fucking hands in it or, and then the men go home to go to dinner. And of course, all the little peckerhead kids in the neighborhood come out and they walk in it and press their hand in it and they get a stick and they write, Tommy is a fink. Right. Shit like that. Exactly. Right. We've all done it. Well, the truth is, when we're children, our soul is wet cement.
Yeah.
And any messages that we receive about ourselves get pressed into that wet cement. And they're not always the explicit messages. I have plenty of clients who were told they were great from childhood. But then through a look, through a nonverbal, through other words that were said, they got other messages. Such as, I had a pair of sisters, 2 sisters, and they were raised, and they, loving parents and all that. But the father always said, you're the pretty one, you're the smart one. Well, what's the underlying message? That the smart one isn't pretty and the pretty one isn't smart. So the smart one grew up believing that she was ugly, and the pretty one then grew up believing that she was dumb. All right, well, that's a message, and it gets pressed into the cement of your soul. So think about how that one message is going to color your career choices when you get to be 16 and 18 and 22. Think about how that one message of I'm not pretty is going to impact your dating. Well, I had one client who latched on. She was in college, and she had a man who was just like the dream boat of the fucking basketball team, took an interest in her. They were at a party, and she did everything she could to hold on to him because he was extraordinarily handsome, and it validated her. She believed in her mind, it validated my looks by having a very handsome man. She spent her next fucking 20 years as a physician in a horseshit relationship with a man because she saw him as more handsome than her. So think about the power of those messages. So if there's one thing you ask me, what's the one thing I've seen that is most common? The one thing I've seen that is common to every single one of my clients is they got messages pressed into the wet cement of their soul that have been, well, imagine driving with your foot on the accelerator and your foot on the brake at the exact same time, right? Or imagine those messages that get pressed in there, they're like a virus infecting the operating system or your fucking computer, and you can't even see the fucking virus. And those messages are in there, and they are driving that fucking operating system that is your life. And you're wondering why you're feeling depressed all the time. You're wondering why you don't have the energy or the motivation. This is plenty of men don't have the motivation to go after dreams, or they can't sustain the motivation, or the feelings of depression and sadness all the time. Plenty of women feel that too, or the constant anxiety. I'm always in motion. I have to stay in motion. Yeah, because you're running from that tidal wave of all your fucking feelings chasing you. Right, all this shit is determined by the messages we got in childhood. And this is why I'm such a huge believer in what I call core beliefs. Those core beliefs, and it's the ones you can't see, the core beliefs that you were taught about life and the world, but most importantly about yourself. And that those core beliefs, so in the work that I do, I move very, very quickly. I work for extended hours. I don't just work for 1 hour with a client. Opening session is between 4 and 6 hours. Most clients choose 6. We go really fucking deep. And we go down and I begin to identify those core beliefs. And then we follow up with 2, 3, or 4 hour session. But pulling out those core beliefs, pulling them out. And healing can happen very, very quickly. A few months if you do the work. But it's identifying, becoming aware of and pulling out those core beliefs and the pain and the fears. But that's the real power undermining you. It's the shit that we were taught about ourselves. And that's why particularly with women, I just put up a TikTok on this within the last week. I think it was women's superpower.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. When a woman's superpower is when she finally fucking realizes that if he walks away, I'll be okay.
I'm enough.
That's right, I'm enough. Or if I have to walk away, I'll be okay. Because so many women, it's true of men too, but I just see it so much in women. They're conditioned to believe that if someone walks away from me, what does that say about me? But also what happens is if somebody walks away, now all of those things I was taught about myself, all of those things that got pressed into the wet cement of my soul and hardened over, there's all those fucking messages. They come roaring up into my fucking head. See, I'm no good. See, nobody wants me. See, I don't matter. See, I'm unlovable. Look, nobody wants me. I'm fucking alone, just like I always fucking do. I'm a fucking piece of shit. But as long as I have someone here, right here in my life, who's pouring a little bit of love into my love cup, even if it's only a little bit, I'll fucking hold on. I'll give you everything. I'll sell the farm. I'll fucking let you hit me. I'll give you all my money. I'll do all the fucking homework and take care of all the chores. And you enjoy the TV, and I'll do all the cooking, and I'll do all the work. Because having you here, your mere even if you don't pour love into my love cup, the mere fact that you are here is a counter message to all the messages I've been getting my entire life that said that I suck. Well, if I suck, why would you be here? So once you leave, your leaving is a confirmation that I suck. But as long as you're here, it's a counter message. It's a confirmation of my worth. So many women will sell the fucking farm. And there are plenty of guys who do this shit too. That used to be me. All right. That's how I fucking know it. And that plenty of people will sell the farm, just stay. Because what's going on deep, deep, deep down inside is your mere presence is a validation of my existence, a validation of my worth. And if you leave, then I am left alone with all those voices saying that I suck, I'm no good, I don't matter, and all that crap. So that's why a woman's superpower is when she finally realizes, hey, you know what? If you leave, it's going to suck. And I'm going to grieve a long time and whatever. But in the end, I'll be okay. And once you realize that your greatest fear, even if it comes to pass, I'll be okay, you've got power, because now I'm not trapped in this relationship. So this takes us back to where we were talking about before, dating. All right. So many people in the beginning of dating won't call out, hey, that hurts. Please don't say that. Or, you know what? I need you to listen to me and ask questions about me more. They won't call that shit out. Why? Because they're afraid of Tom, Billy, Paul, or Jim walking away. But if I'm not afraid of that, then I will stand up for my needs and I'll say, hey, you know what? I need you to give more attention to me. Or, you know what? I need you to, just shoot me a few texts during the day. It takes you 5 fucking seconds. I just like have some back and forth. Or, I need you to tell me what you need. I need you to not just do all the silent thing. I need more communication from you. When you're not afraid of someone leaving, you'll stand up for your needs and you'll work harder to create an equitable relationship. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely does. Yeah. A lot of your TikToks too touch on cheating. And I know there's that famous saying, once a cheater, always a cheater. Is that necessarily true? Like, do you think that first couples could survive and have survived something like that?
Great question. And when I actually wrote a book on cheating, on infidelity, specifically female infidelity. People are like, female infidelity, that's nothing. Women don't cheat as much. I'm like, there is nothing in all of research that is underreported and under-researched more than female infidelity. We don't want to look at that. People don't want to look at female infidelity. But infidelity in general, cheating in general, that is the biggest question I get. Will a cheater cheat again? And my response is this. I have my answer, but it comes with 2 caveats. All right? My answer is yes. A cheater will always cheat again. Unless, 2 things. 1, they actually do the work of going down deep inside to determine what those core beliefs were that they were taught about themselves. If you were taught that you suck as a person, if that's one of the beliefs in your cement, guess what you're going to always need? You're always going to need new sources of worth pouring love into your love cup. You're always going to need some new fix, some new high, confirming your worth. So if your wife is raising the fucking kids and you're not getting that constant affirmation you're worth, somebody fawning over you, you're going to go looking. Does that excuse your behavior? No, cheating's wrong. Don't fucking do that to your fucking wife. That's bullshit. Don't fucking do that shit to your husband. So I'm not excusing it, but I'm saying it's being driven by the core beliefs you're taught about yourself. So what I'm getting at is the cheater will cheat again unless they are forced to go in and actually explore the deep shit. And the sucky part is so many therapists don't go that deep. But if somebody who is cheated, they'll come back and say, no, I've changed. I swear to God, I've changed. And they will be roses and cotton candy and fucking rainbows out their asshole. You'll be like, oh my God, they changed. They care about me. He comes to my things, or he's happy to drive the kids. Oh my God, this is the husband I've always wanted. Yeah. Then you go back in and give it about 2 months, because they've changed the surface behaviors, but they haven't changed the core beliefs that drive those surface behaviors. Unless you change the actual root problem, you're just putting fucking paper on it. You're putting lipstick on a pig. And so what happens is he'll revert back. Okay, so the first thing is they have to go into the core issues that cause them to cheat to begin with. And if they don't do that, then they will cheat again. But that's the second caveat. And the second caveat is, what if we change the definition of cheating from having sex with someone or having an emotional affair to engaging in some behavior that has the power to blow up the relationship if it's discovered? See, so they may pull off a cheating, but now they may become a fucking junkie on the side, or they may start gambling with the family money on the side, keeping it silent. And if that ever got discovered, that they just blew $25,000 of the money in our fucking bank account, oh yeah, that would end the fucking relationship. Or maybe they start fucking, instead of cheating, maybe they start overworking or hiding at the office because I don't want to go home to my wife because she's such a fucking bitch. Or maybe the wife who cheated before, now she just starts over shopping. She's constantly fucking shopping. Yeah, eventually that has the power to blow up a relationship. Or I'm just going to begins over parenting. My life just becomes about my kids. Fuck you. I don't even need you anymore. Right? Okay. So the 2 caveats are, yes, the person will cheat again if they don't do the work to determine what caused it in the beginning, in the first place. And they're always going to say, oh, I was just going through hard. They'll make up some bullshit excuse. That's not somebody doing the deep work. And second of all, the cheating may come in a different form. But here's the other thing. When it comes to cheating, The other person that has to do the work is the person that would actually consider taking someone back who just cheated on them, who just inflicted that much fucking pain on you. If you're that quick to take somebody back, and by that quick, I mean within 6 months, within a year, you're that quick to take somebody back, you haven't done your fucking work. There is something operating inside of you that you're afraid to let go of this person. You really want something, but you haven't done your fucking work, and your fucking work is getting out all of your fucking pain that this massive trust, this massive betrayal, breach of trust happened, and already you're ready to jump back in after 6 fucking months? No, but it's also you doing your work. And what I would ask if this person were my client is, what's the main fear operating here? Is the greater fear being alone? Is the greater fear losing this person? Is the greater fear standing up and saying, you fucking hurt me? In other words, what's the reason you really want this person back? Maybe you feel under pressure. So look at this scenario, and this may sound crazy, but it's so fucking true. It happens with some measure of regularity. Imagine, let's just say it's a woman. I'm talking to women, so I'll say it's a woman. Your husband fucking cheats on you. And let's say your parents are religious, or your mom's religious, or your mom has always, as a woman, she's always been your fucking, the most critical voice in your life, sort of your antagonist. She loves you, I guess, we're family, whatever, but she's always fucking criticizing. And she'd say, and she loves your husband. You should go back to Steve. You should really go back. I can't believe you wouldn't go back. Steve, he's such a nice guy, though. And he's so good. So you're coming under heat from the person who potentially very often, even in the 30s, 40s, or whatever, is still the most powerful person in your life. It ain't your husband.
Wow.
Still your fucking mother. And so some women, some men too, under pressure from a mother, under pressure from a father, under pressure from their fucking religion, will go back into a cheating relationship. Oh, you need to let that go. Men are men, or you need to let that go. I'm sure she didn't mean it, because you got to keep that nuclear family together, because that's what God wants, or, whatever.
Right.
And so they're coming under that fucking pressure. And so my question to the client is, what's your fear? Who are you afraid of? What's the voice you're afraid of? Who are you afraid of? What people will think? Are you afraid of backlash? Are you afraid of hurting that person? In other words, do you really want to go back in? What percentage of you actually wants to go back in? What percentage of you is afraid of not going back in? What percentage of you is afraid of different voices? So there's so many factors here.
Yeah.
But if the person who's cheated on isn't doing their work, I guarantee you that's going to cause problems too. Because shit almighty, if you ain't fucking speaking up and speaking your truth, and not just I'm mad, but what's really going on inside of me that I would even consider going back. And I'm not saying you shouldn't go back, but look at your shit. And if you're going to go back in, oh shit, it's going to be a flying fuck fest later, man. It just is. So can people recover from cheating? Yes, absolutely. There's just a fuck ton of work that has to happen between now and then. Yeah.
Right. Got to put the work in. Something I wanted to ask you about, I saw TikTok about ex-spouses with kids and bashing each other. Because over the years, I've actually seen this quite a bit, whether it's amongst friends, in public, or the big one, social media.
Social media.
And how the one spouse can navigate, the one that's being respectful, navigate that. Is it best just to say nothing? And here's something really interesting. And Tina and I have talked about this in the past, that I've actually seen more males putting their shit out on social media than females. And even with my own experience, I was so private. I barely was on Facebook. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. My husband had left. I didn't really want anybody to know. I was very much the opposite, became very private. But what I've noticed is this seems to be, they'll go online and hang everything out rather than, just talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a really great question. And the reason it's such a great question is because the ones that lose the most in all of this, yes, it hurts me as a parent. But the ones who lose the most, it's always the fucking kids. I'm sorry, but it just is. I mean, do you really think you're doing your kid a fucking favor by putting your shit out there on social fucking media? How embarrassing to be your fucking child, that you're saying bad shit about their mother, but not only that, their friends might see it, or their friend's mom might see it, or whatever, but it's like no child wants to hear bad about either one of their fucking parents. You're destroying your child. And this goes back to what we talked about a couple of times today. People get so pregnant with their own fucking feelings that it's like
so emotional.
Yes. And so it ends up, that's it. They word vomit. They just spill it all everywhere. And they think, and so they're making these horrific decisions on their children, not to mention hurting the other person. But here's the other thing. People doing that, people who are bad mouthing a spouse, it's just like bad mouthing anything on social media. You don't realize how fucking stupid you look. That we've all been around social media now over a decade, and it's just like nobody really likes. We all sort of, even if we somewhat agree on, politics has been the big thing where we've all sort of learned this lesson. In when we were growing up, when my parents were, my age now or whatever, it's just like, what did you not talk about? Religion and politics.
Religion and politics.
Exactly.
I say it all the time.
I would love to go back to those days.
Yes,
right?
something my dad always said, don't talk about politics.
Well, exactly. And we alienate. That's it. And we alienate people who are good people, by, I got to give my truth on fucking politics. Just shut the fuck up. All right. But anyway, my point is, well, it relates to this too. Anybody, so let's say the guys you're talking about who are putting all this shit out there, bad mouthing the ex. Yeah, their closest buddies are going to agree. Yes, their sister is going to agree, or their mother is going to agree. But beyond that, most people are like, dude, keep it in private. It's like, nobody wants to touch that shit. Nobody wants to hear that shit. It's like, dude, you're a fucking Debbie Downer, man. It's just like, shut the fuck up. Deal with that in private. Go to your, I feel bad for you, but dude, come on. Nobody wants to read that shit. It's just true. But they're so pregnant with their own fucking pain that it just spills out everywhere. Okay. But back to your original question, this notion of when you're divorcing, what do? Well, when my first wife and I were going through a divorce in the mid-90s, the therapist said to us, and they showed us the research that said the worst thing you can do is badmouth the other parent. And so, I committed to that. It's like I wasn't going to do it because I also had parents who were savvy on this shit. And I saw that it would only hurt my kids. It's just like, and so, but the thing is that notion of don't disparage the other parent, it only works if two people are doing it.
Yeah.
I didn't learn that till about 20 years later, right? Because if I'm only being nice or not disparaging but what if this other parent is pouring poison into my children's ears? Okay, now we've got a problem because then children naturally assume that whatever is being heard is true. And if the other parent is not providing a counter message to that, then I'm fundamentally normalizing the very thing, the bad stuff that the other parent is saying, right? I'm normalizing, there's no counter message. And so one of the things that I've learned from my own experience, and I tell this to clients, and I say, they say, oh, Sven, my husband's bad-mouthing Marie. Or, oh, Sven, my wife, she's just a fucking raging bitch, and she's saying all this shit to my kids, and she won't let me near her kids. It can go either way. And one of the things that I tell them is you really have a choice. And the choice is you have basically three things. If you're trying to operate at this level and your ex is operating at this level, one of your choices is you can drop down and operate at this level and just turn into this fucking, let's all sling mud at each other, right? And the anger rages, it spills out on everyone, on each other, and you're going to go through a lot more money with lawyers in your fucking divorce, but ultimately you're going to just destroy your kids. And nothing's going to pain them more. And I work with numerous families actually in the last couple of years, over 30 years, but in the last couple of years where the kids are destroyed. Kid is a drug addict now. Kid dropped out of school. Kid is turned into a fucking gangster. Kid is fucking put on 100 pounds, from eating, all the different shit. Yeah. Right?
They're struggling with relationships of their own.
Yes, thank you. On the much more practical level. Yes, thank you. And the parents are like, oh, that's not me. It's like, are you that fucking stupid? Really? You think that you're fucking divorced? It's just like, oh my God, shut the fuck up. You have no idea how fucking stupid you sound. You have the two people they love the most breaking up. That alone is traumatic. But then you have them turning on each other like rabid dogs. It'll break a child's heart again and again and again. So you've got three choices. If you're a parent and you want to do the, don't disparage the other parent, but the other parent is pouring poison into the kid's ears about you, you can continue, you can drop down and get into that dogfight. It's your choice. It's your life. Do what you want. I don't recommend it because it's going to hurt your kids. The other option is you can keep operating at this level and the other parent is pouring poison into their ears. But the bottom line is that could potentially destroy your relationship. And I went through this. It really harmed my relationship with my kids from 5, 8, 10 until their 20s. And I knew that even if I had to wait till my kids' 30s, eventually children begin to see with adult eyes, and and eventually people's character comes out in the long term. And for a while, I was holding on to all the things I knew about their mother, and I was waiting for the day they would come to me, and then I'd be able to get justice and tell the truth. And then it was the mid 2000s, and I'm like, I'm sick of carrying around all this shit. And so the vision in my head that I tell people is, imagine two enemy armies encamped on opposite sides of a river. and they've been in war, they've been in battle, and our divorce went through in 96. And so now it's about 07. And I just decided, I said to my troops, load up our semis with all our ammunition, all of our artillery, everything. And we loaded up the semis. We drove them across the bridge. We left the semis running, left the keys in them, and we all walked back. And I said, in the words of that great Nez Perce chief, he said, "I will fight no more forever." I was tired of fighting because I knew the pall, the cloud was casting over my children. I was just carrying around all this negativity inside. And so I let her win. And I kept operating at this level. In my kids' lives, they've heard me say at most 3 disparaging things about their mother, and those only came in their 20s. I never have. And that has paid dividends now in their 20s and 30s, but it cost me their teens. It cost me their late, preteens. Right. Okay, so so we have 2 choices so far, and there's a third choice. 1 is get in the mudsling, turn into a pit bull just like them. 2 is operate at this level, but there's a short-term price, or the next, you may lose the next 10 or 20 years. But the third thing is this. Keep operating at the level of, I'm not going to disparage the other parent, but I also am going to counter any messages that I hear coming about me. Okay, so that's self-protection. And no one can disparage you for self-protection. Right. No one can, it's just not true. What your father is saying about me is simply not true. Or no, I have been consistent with child support payments. You have every right to defend, and you need to do that, because it's not just that you have a right to your kids. Your children have a right to both of their parents. I mean, unless their parents is a drug abuser or something like that, or beats them, they need that relationship with you too. So you have a responsibility to protect your own image in their eyes, because they need you. I had one parent, I put up this post last week that we're talking about here, about this decision last week before. And I had one parent comment and say, she said, my sister told me, just, don't disparage the other parent, and let the kids get out. If they're frustrated with their father, just let them get it out. You don't have to comment. You can say, I'm sorry you're having a hard day or whatever, but let them get that out, because the child still needs to get the pain out. And then I had another parent say, I don't let my children disparage their father. Yes, he's saying stuff about me, but I also don't let them disparage, and so that's another parent's take on it. Some say, we'll let the child get the pain out. Another parent says, no, you're not allowed to disparage either of your parents, which is kind of cool, because when you're in a good marriage relationship, if I'm the husband, no, you don't talk that way to your mother, young lady. Right. Or no,
the respect is there.
The respect thing, but they're now fucking exes, and they're demanding respect from their kids, which I can see the value in that. But also what it's short-circuiting is the child is then being told that my feelings aren't legitimate, right? So then the child hides that anger or hides that sadness, and they stuff it down. And so it's possible to negate the child's feelings. So that could have a backlash effect. So there's no cut and dried fucking answer. I am just generally a fan of teaching the child that it's okay to get their feelings out. I'm not slinging mud in the opposite direction, but I'm standing up for my honor and who I am as a person, because I need that relationship with the kids so that they can come to me, so that they still trust me, and so that I can be there to serve their needs.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's excellent advice. Yeah. No, I don't have kids, but Tina does. I've got a nephew, and I couldn't imagine him. I mean, he's been through his own crap. But just to add to that.
Well, Tara, and that's actually a really interesting thing that you brought up. I don't have kids of my own, but I have a nephew. And one of the things that was determined, there was a research institute in the 90s called Search Institute, and they did research on parenting and on child rearing and stuff like that. One of the things that they determined is the single biggest thing that determines, and this was a 4-year study, whatever, the single biggest thing that determines a teenager's long-term sort of mental health, emotional health, and development, the single biggest impact that enables them to sort of ride through the teen years and become stable and so forth, is having a non-parent adult who takes them under their wing, who sort of mentors them. So your role as an aunt, or Tina, your role in other kids' lives as a room mother or as a coach or whatever, is very critical, because we've all known those kids, or maybe we were that kid who, my parents were shit, but, Mrs. Thompson, she always had a hug, and she was always so nice to me. And or my Uncle Steve, he was just a good guy, and I could talk to him. Or my Aunt Tara, You know, she was just the greatest, blah, 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 blah. So it's easy to minimize a role in kids' lives if I'm not the parent. But actually, the research bears out that that's a highly important role in a child's life, a non-parent adult.
It's almost too that when you're in that role, you're outside looking in. So you can have a different perspective and, you know, see different things, right?
Amen.
As well. Well, before I let you go, I saw this quote on your website and I thought it was really cool. So I just wanted to read it.
Sure.
Anytime you're going to grow, you're going to lose something. You're losing what you're hanging on to keep safe. You're losing habits that you're comfortable with. You're losing familiarity. And it's excellent, you know, because I've been through it. It's so true.
Well,
very, very true.
Yes. And think about it particularly as women, and how that drive to feel safe, that drive to feel secure is so powerful for a woman. All right. In a way that I don't think it is as much for men. Men have other drives. All right. But that need to feel secure. So if I've always been this way, if I've always acted this way, the notion of acting differently, the notion of speaking differently or saying different things, the notion of thinking differently or believing differently about myself or about life, that's radical. And it creates a sense of you're destabilized because it's not what you're familiar with. Right.
Yeah.
Or let's just say, some people grew up growing very familiar with chaos, and they get into a marriage and it's chaos and it's madness and it's fighting, but it's what they've always known. And it sounds crazy, but there's a familiarity to the chaos, or there's a familiarity to the fighting. And I hate it, but it's what I know.
It's almost a comfortable thing, but it shouldn't be, but it is because you're used to that, right? Like
that's right. And so think about it. If that's what you've been used to your whole life, if you meet a guy when you're 22 and you grew up in a home of chaos and fighting, you meet a guy when you're 22 and he's a nice guy, but he's boring. In other words, there's not the chaos. There's not that, that exhilaration, that fighting.
Yeah.
And so you got to go through a shitty marriage or something shitty before you realize, fucking hell, what I wouldn't give to have the boring guy again who wasn't boring.
Right?
He didn't have the fucking crazy ass trauma.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's so true that notion of letting go of that which is familiar, or even just a natural break of a divorce. Yeah. Or Tina, you can speak to this, you know, as our children age, when they're no longer preteens and now they're teens and we don't have that close connection that we had with them when they were little, right? Or when they go off and have their first job and they're living, 100 miles away and they're not here. You know, it's not familiar anymore. It's like, fuck, well, what's
dreading the day?
Well, yeah.
I'm going through it, yeah.
But you are going through it because it comes in little stages, doesn't it? They pull away, They don't share everything anymore. Right. I'm not their best friend anymore. And so that loss of familiarity, and here's the thing, and this is true of your work, this is true of parenting, this is true of your hobbies and your interests and your passions, such as cars, whatever. Anything you pump more energy into, anything you invest more of yourself into becomes a greater part of your identity. Right. So if I'm pumping every fucking ballet class, soccer practice, fucking violin lesson, every fucking piano lesson, you sit there and you're with your child in the room while they're practicing their piano, and every fucking knee that gets skinned and you got to wash out the rocks, every single one of those is one more nickel in that investment that is this child. And the more we invest those nickels, the more my identity, my worth, my value, my sense of self is sewn up in this person. So now when this person does what these people are supposed to do, and that is walk away, that's what we're breeding them to do, to be able to stand on 2 feet and not need me anymore and jump out of the vest and fly, right? So then when they're gone, well, fucking hell, what's my identity?
What do I do now?
What do I do now? Think about it.
More racing, Tina.
Well, that's it.
Something.
A very, very dear friend of mine, woman, she likes to tell this story. I gave my 40s to the company. And she was at the beginning of a company. She was employee number one of a company that grew into a public company, $500 million company, whatever. And she was employee number one. And the boss absolutely would not let her leave, and when she finally left, it was like a divorce. basically. And she had been there for 10 years. I gave my 40s to the company and all this shit. And so for her leaving, and I have profound admiration for her and her husband, wonderful people. And for her, the familiarity of working that hard, the familiarity of being so critical and having 10 million balls in the air at once, to leave that familiarity and to leave what you always know. And it's like, well, who am I? I know I can't do that anymore. I don't want to live that way anymore, but who the fuck am I?
Yeah.
It's very disorienting anytime we go through a divorce, or we go through a loss, or we go through a death, or our children leave, or whatever it might be, or when a parent dies, or when both parents die. It was like, oh shit, now I'm the old person. Now I can see the finish line, or how am I going to live now that my father, he was my rock and he's gone, or whatever it might be. So those changes in that which is familiar, but what it does, it draws out new aspects of us. It forces us to recreate ourselves. And one of my all-time favorite quotes by a fellow Minnesotan, grew up in Minnesota, don't live there anymore, but by a fellow Minnesotan, according to Rolling Stone, he is the single greatest rock artist of all time, solo rock artist of all time. Of course, no, not Elvis, Bob Dylan. Mm-hmm. And as Bob Dylan, the great Minnesotan, in addition to the other great Minnesotan, Prince, but anyway, separate issue, as Bob Dylan sang, "He not busy being born is busy dying." Right? That we're being asked by life to constantly recreate ourselves and to find new joy and find a new sense of fulfillment. I mean, that's you guys with racing, I mean, you grew up in it, Tina, but Tara, that was, you found a new love. And even if we grew up in something, sometimes we lose it and then we come back to it. It's like, whoa, new life. He not busy being born, or she not busy being born is busy dying. And so, it is a challenge to let go of the familiar and create new life.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So you're kind of everywhere. If somebody wants to reach out to you, I mean, your website, BadassCounseling.com for sure.
Yep.
You're on TikTok. They can follow you on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter,
YouTube, the whole thing. And
thing.
And I'm not real original on all the platforms. It's just Badass Counseling.
Yeah.
And
it's a perfect name for you.
But that is original.
Suits
that
you.
Caught my eye.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. My girlfriend at the time when I was incorporating, and I said, this is my company, and I had already been operating under that name for my company for a long time. And when I was incorporating, she said, and she's built some pretty killer businesses of her own that grew very large, and so real smart business-wise, far smarter than me. And she said, I think that's a really fucking horrible idea, because nobody's going to want to go to counseling where it's like scary and badass. To this day, she says, I was completely wrong. Your instincts were totally right. That was a perfect name, whatever. But all platforms, Badass Counseling. If somebody's interested in counseling or interested in my books, they're on my website, BadassCounseling.com.
There's 7 books, by the way. There's 7 books.
They're all there. And if we do have regular guests, my podcast, I don't interview people. I actually do therapy on people on the show. And so,
that's amazing.
Yeah. And so we have different.
That's so cool.
So every Thursday we drop a new episode where I'm actually doing therapy with someone or multiple people on a show. We pick a topic. And so like a week in advance, I'll announce what the next topic might be. So for instance, next week, the topic might be lying. And then I'll say, and people can write into the email box. It's production@badasscounseling.com. My production team gets it, and then they pick certain ones. So if you want to be on the Badass Counseling podcast or the Badass Counseling show, they can write into podcast@badasscounseling. But anyway, that's Thursday nights.
Amazing.
But Sunday nights, we drop a totally different thing. It's called Lightning Round. And that's where I'm doing a TikTok live where I'm getting the live scrolling of people's questions. And I did one before I came on tonight. I had to get my fix, and get me amped up for you guys. And, but anyway, and so we tape a TikTok live, and then one of my producers, Rob, the brains of the outfit, he edits out all the ums and all the shits, and not all the swearing. I wouldn't have that. And then that goes up as a lightning round on Sundays. So we have 2 totally different formats, and one's on Thursdays and one's on Sundays. But that's the Badass Counseling show. And otherwise, And the truth is, I get a lot of people reaching out to me with questions or wanting free counseling, or, hey, can you just answer a question? I always tell people, go ahead and reach out. I may not get to it, but I really strive to answer people's questions, and people can reach out to me through Instagram or through the website or whatever. And I
and
you're
reachable, right? You got back to us, and I was like,
awesome,
just amazed, and so you're totally reachable, and
try to help out.
I can't thank you enough for coming on. Like, we could just talk to you for hours. Like,
you guys are great.
Totally.
No, the pleasure was mine. You guys were great.
Well, thank you. Like,
thank
we
you.
so appreciate you coming on, and would love to have you back
sometime
too, and see what else you're doing. You know, another 100 things or whatever. But
absolutely.
But yeah, I just wanted to thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. And you guys have a kick-ass night.
Thanks.
Yes, that's another thing. The kick-ass. Have a kick-ass day.
I mean, of course, we all want to have a kick-ass day. So
absolutely,
have a kick-ass night.
Yeah,
all right.
That's awesome.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much. Take care. Well, good night, everybody. And I guess we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.